The subcommittee will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today to receive testimony on whether the payment card industry data standards reduce cybercrime. Good afternoon. In recent years, a number of well-known companies have experienced massive data breaches in their internal computer networks, resulting in the compromise of sensitive customer data. The criminals who perpetrated these intrusions targeted the credit and debit card account information held by merchants or third-party data processors as the result of retail transactions. With a thriving black market that rapidly packages and sells stolen cardholder data, the information compromised during these breaches may ultimately aid in a number of criminal organizations. We know that some percentage of the fraudulent charges and illicit businesses from these activities is used to fund terrorist activity throughout the world. In his 2002 autobiography, The Bali nightclub bomber specifically referred to online credit card fraud and carding as a means to fund terrorist activities and encouraged his followers to use this method to obtain financing. More recently, a British case involving 3 jihadis alleged that the men used stolen credit card numbers obtained through phishing scams and Trojan horses to make more than $3.5 million in fraudulent charges. The jihadis reportedly used the numbers at hundreds of online stores to purchase equipment and other items, including prepaid cell phones and airline tickets, in order to aid jihadi groups in the field. The subcommittee is holding this hearing today to voice our concern about the growing number of data breaches and to understand what is being done to curb this activity and to suggest that both merchants and the pay card industry have significant work ahead to meet our expectations. The payment card industry, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, and JCB requires every business that stores, processes, or transmits computer data to comply with specific data security standards. The intent of these standards is to reduce the likelihood of successful data security breaches. On an annual basis, these merchants must certify that they are compliant with the payment card industry data security standards known as PCI standards. The PCI standards contain a number of security controls that businesses must implement. The PCI standards alone allow smaller businesses to self-certify compliance, while larger merchants must be validated by a qualified security assessor. Enforcement comes through the card companies themselves, who can levy fines and/or prohibit non-compliant merchants from using their services. To be clear, the PCI standards are not government regulations and are not enforced by the government. This committee supports industry-created and managed security standards as long as they are strong and effective. In light of the rising number of publicly reported data breaches, Chairman Thompson launched an investigation to determine whether the PCI standards have been effective in reducing cybercrime. The results of this investigation suggest that the PCI standards are of questionable strength and effectiveness. The effort to become PCI compliant is a daunting challenge for merchants whose core competency is the selling of merchandise rather than expertise in security. The costs for the largest merchants can be as high as $18 million a year. Many believe that if they complete this arduous task, they will be rewarded with a secure system. But the committee's investigation confirms what many analysts have known for years. In the words of one credit card company, full compliance with the PCI standard does not guarantee that the merchant or vendor will not be the victim of a data breach. Take last year's data breach of Hannaford Brothers Company, for example. hackers installed malicious code on servers to every one of the grocery stores in the Hannaford chain. The malware intercepted the data stored on the magnetic strip of payment cards as customers used them at the checkout counter. Hannaford received certification that they were PCI compliant on February 28th of 2008. But on February 27th of 2008, according to the documents obtained by the committee, Hannaford was notified that a number of the credit card numbers from its network were stolen and being used on the black market. In other words, Hannaford was being certified as PCI compliant while an illegal intrusion into its network was in progress. I do not believe that PCI standards are worthless. In the absence of other requirements, they do serve some purpose. But I do want to dispel the myth once and for all that PCI compliance is enough to keep a company secure. It is not, and the credit card companies acknowledge that. The bottom line is that if we care about keeping money out of the hands of terrorists and organized criminals, we have to do more, and we have to do it now. Specifically, we must improve our policies and our technology. First, the standards have to be better because they are inadequate to protect against the methods being used by modern hackers and attackers. Despite what the credit card companies say, for millions of small and large businesses out there, the PCI standards are the ceiling and not the floor. The bar must be raised. In this dynamic threat environment, attackers are constantly ahead of defenders, and yet the PCI standards are updated only by unanimous consent every 2 years. But the part of the problem is that the standards do not require more frequent penetration testing. The only way to reduce breaches is by continuously testing and attacking a system through penetration testing and timely mitigation. Second, the payment card industry and issuing banks need to commit to investing in infrastructure upgrades here in the United States. In a response to the committee's investigation, one breach company noted that the effectiveness of data security standards is inherently limited by the technology base of U.S. credit and signature debit card processing networks. Credit and signature debit transactions are not protected by encrypted PINs. Implementation of encrypted PINs for all credit and debit transactions could be useful. Countries in Europe and Asia are deploying new technologies like chip and PIN to fight fraud that could lead to organized crime and terrorism, and it is working. According to the UK Payments Association, 3 years after beginning the migration to chip card technology, losses on transactions had reduced by 67% from £219 million in 2004 to £73 million in 2007. However, despite card fraud dropping 32% domestically between 2006 and 2007, overall counterfeit card fraud affecting UK customers was up 46%. Why? The cards are being used by malicious actors in countries that had not yet implemented the technology. The U.S. is being blown away by security investments overseas, and our 1950s-era system is making us a weak link in the security chain. Magnetic strip-based technology is outmoded and inherently less secure when compared to smart cards or other developing technologies. While I am deeply concerned about our security, the payment card industry and issuing banks should be ashamed about the current state of play and doing everything possible to immediately institute improvements in infrastructure. I know that our witnesses care about keeping financial information out of the hands of terrorists and other organized crime elements. And I know that the payment card industry cares. I know that the merchant community cares. But the time for waiting is over. The time for shifting risk is over. Today, the responsibility is yours to make this situation better. This is the first step in the committee's review of the payment card industry's efforts, a review that I believe the chairman plans to continue. We look forward to hearing about your plans to improve America's cybersecurity posture and working with you in all the weeks and months ahead. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Lundgren, for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to compliment you for scheduling this important data security hearing. It is an issue that most people are aware of, but few seem to understand the full extent of this threat or the remedies required to eliminate it as much as possible. The new information age created by computers, the internet, and instant communication offers many benefits to the nation, particularly our economy. Transacting business in the internet is one of the key benefits of the information age. Utilizing, obviously, credit cards today is the way people normally transact business. It's the new currency of our age. A lot of people don't even carry cash around anymore. In fact, sometimes you try and pay with cash and people look at you trying to figure out what scam you've got going on. I was at one place where I actually had a 50-cent piece that I was trying to utilize, and the woman would not recognize it as an American currency. I was trying to explain to her the image on the surface, and she just evidently missed that history lesson about that president. The internet has acted as a powerful economic engine for the U.S. economy. Unfortunately, these new business opportunities carried via the internet have also transformed the landscape for the criminals, making available a wide array of new methods that identity thieves can use to access and exploit the personal and financial information of others. Today's skilled computer hackers are capable of perpetrating large-scale data breaches that leave tens of millions of individuals at risk of identity theft. I recall my wife and I were at dinner one night. I gave the card to the waiter. After 5 minutes, the waiter came back kind of embarrassed and said, "Well, Mr. Lundgren, this card doesn't seem to be working." So I turned to my wife and said, "Why don't you give them the card?" They gave them the card. It's the same account. They came back later and said, "It's not working." Luckily, my wife had another card. If I had been in Chicago changing planes and needed to stay overnight there, I would have been up the creek without a paddle, as we say. We went home that night, called into the credit card company, and they informed us there had been a credit card compromise. Our account had been compromised. They would tell us nothing more than that. My wife went online to see what our account was at that point in time. There was no such account. It was as if it had vanished. The point I'm making is we were never notified by the credit card company, and we have a number of automatic payments that are made against a card, and we tried to track every one of them down, missed one of them, and got a notice that we had not paid that month for something. We are putting a tremendous obligation on the entire industry in this case. One is to try and secure things. The other one is when there is a breach, what is your requirement to notify people? Under what circumstances do you notify people? And if you're not giving that information to those of us who are the consumers, is that information being given to law enforcement to follow up in all circumstances? Those are just some of the questions. The key to this internet economic engine running smoothly is data security. There's no doubt about it. If we're unable to secure our online financial transactions from cyber criminals, even those that are not involved with terrorism, then our economic growth will be jeopardized, and maybe actually we fulfill the terrorist dreams of pulling down our country through an economic attack. Customers will reject online purchases if they can't be assured that their payment card transactions are protected. Without consumer or customer confidence in the safety of the payment card transaction, internet commerce would dry up, and we could have problems with people just using the card when they're actually at brick-and-mortar stores. We know it was a huge problem in the early days of the internet when it was an unknown frontier. Unchecked criminal activity will bring back those Wild West days, undermine customer confidence, and cripple internet commerce. I applaud the payment card industry for investing their resources and personnel to develop and promote a universal data security standard. As was mentioned, it is voluntary. We understand that. A lot of work has gone into it. We understand that. There's always the challenge. It's easy for those of us in government to say we can do a better job. Thank God we haven't had any security breaches on the part of the federal government. Oh, excuse me, I guess we have had a couple of them here and there. All that points out is it is a real challenge to stay ahead of the bad guys. I mean, you got mischievous hackers, you've got individual criminal hackers, you've got criminal enterprise hackers, you've got transnational organization hackers, you've got nation-state hackers, and frankly, you've got to try and protect against all of that. The PCI Security Standards Council, that includes all of the major card brands, has at least understood that there is a need for a set of comprehensive requirements for enhancing payment account security. One of the questions I would ask is there any place for the retailers to be involved in discussion of those standards and part of that? Another question I would ask is, I know you have some flexibility within the standards as they exist now, but is it still too much of one size fits all? In other words, I know you have a demarcation between mom and pop stores and the big retailers, but in between, does it make sense? Are the standards flexible enough to be effective on the one hand and at the same time allow for different business models to operate in a reasonable fashion for that? So I realize that the first standard was developed 2006. It's improved the standard of security in the payment card industry. It's improved the situation. More needs to be done. We're trying to identify those areas that need to be done. We're trying to make sure that all the parties are brought to bear on the question, and we're looking to see if government regulation is needed. The last thing I would say is this. The challenge for us in government is to try and ensure that we don't interfere with the ingenuity of the private sector in being able to put the fixes into the security system that are necessary. And if you can help us in that regard, not only will you benefit, but we will benefit as well. And thank you very much, Madam Chair.
The chair now recognizes the chairman of the full Committee on Homeland Security, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for an opening statement.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this very critical hearing on the effectiveness of the PCI standards. From our personal computers to government networks to our critical infrastructure, the United States is under attack in cyberspace. This adversary ranges in skill from unsophisticated to highly capable, from lone hackers to organized crime and nation states. Their intent ranges from nuisance and disruption to theft, espionage, and warfare. Their successes are varied. From every hacker that we've caught and prosecuted, thousands continue to work unabated. In December 2008, the Center for Strategic and International Studies concluded that the battle for cyberspace is one that we are not winning. Willie Sutton was rumored to have said he robbed banks because that's where the money is. In today's world of payment cards transaction, the money is now located on computer networks. On any given day, billions of dollars flow back and forth between merchants and payment card networks, which process credit card numbers for transaction in an area that is ripe for hackers to exploit, and they are taking advantages of weaknesses in the system. We're here today to learn about the private sector's efforts to combat data breaches and cybercrime, and to assess the quality of the payment card industry data security standards. The standards have been around for several years, but massive ongoing data breaches at some of America's largest merchants suggest that the standards are inadequate to prevent breaches. The essential flaw with the PCI standards is that it allows companies to check boxes but not necessarily be secure. Checking boxes make it easier to assess compliance with a standard, but compliance does not equal security. We have to get beyond checkbox security. It provides a false sense of security for everyone involved, and it is ineffective in reducing the real threats. Companies need to understand that even if 100% compliance with the PCI standards is achieved, hackers will continue to develop techniques to exploit the computer systems of companies holding holding cardholder data. You are not safe unless you continually test your systems. Today, we are calling for change. I call on the payment card industry and the thousands of merchants and vendors who have to comply with the standards to rededicate themselves to the goal of securing their networks. For the payment card industry and the issuing banks, this is going to mean significant investment in infrastructure upgrades. As the chair has pointed out, these investments are already ongoing overseas. I'm puzzled and disappointed that we are not seeing similar upgrades here domestically, and I hope our witnesses can explain why the card industry appears not to be moving quickly to address these issues. I'm also deeply troubled by the testimony that suggests credit card companies are less interested in substantially improving their product and procedures than they are reallocating their fraud costs. The payment card industry efforts to shift risk appears to have contributed to our current state of insecurity, and I'm concerned that as long as the card industry is writing the standards, we will never see a more secure system. We in Congress must seriously consider whether we can continue to rely on industry-created and enforced standards, particularly if they are inadequate to address the ongoing threats. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and across committee lines to further explore whether government action is necessary to protect against these threats. One thing is certain, the current system is not working. Madam Chair, I thank you for your work in this area, and I look forward to the testimony of both panels.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Other members of the subcommittee are reminded that under the committee rules, opening statements may be submitted for the record. We're going to take a break right now for votes. They've come up, and we're scheduled for 3 votes, which puts us at about 25 minutes. Well, now it's less than 25 minutes, maybe about 15. So please excuse us as we go and recess for votes. Yes, we have 3 minutes.